In this video, I want to cover polishing your epoxy so you can take it to the next level. Often people ask me, what do I mean by polishing? So let's get into it. I'm never sure how this is going to show up in the video, but this is a recent job I did where it's what I'll call a sanded finish. It's not polished. Maybe some of you saw that video series where I taught you how to make this Memorial Day flag. If not, and you want to see how to actually make this flag step by step, you can check out that series in this playlist that I'll put right up here. Or it may be up here because I can never know which way I'm pointing on the camera. In any event, this finish is what I'd call a satin level finish. It doesn't have a high gloss to it or polish. I sanded it with dry sanding up to about, I don't remember what it was, somewhere around 500 grit, could have been 800 grit. I'm not sure, but I didn't do any wet sanding or any polishing on this. I just sanded it, and then I applied a rattle can lacquer for the finish, and I think it looks pretty darn good this way. But that's the look I was going for with this board. If you want to take it to the next level, then you're going to have to up your game and do some polishing. Let me show you what I'm talking about. In this video, I'll be demonstrating on this board how I applied polish and a polishing system to get to this high gloss. That's the front. Look how you can see right through to the corks and actually read what's on the corks. And this is the back. So if you want to up your game to the next level, you're going to have to learn how to polish your epoxy. That means I go beyond sanding, just dry sanding, and I do wet sanding, and I use a polishing compound. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how to do that. What I will not do is take up your time by starting from surfacing the board and going through all of the sanding process. You know how to sand a board. And if you don't know how to finish your epoxy by sanding, then you can watch some of my other videos, and I demonstrate me sanding the board up to a specific level of grit after I've surfaced it. The first thing you're going to need to do when you want to get into polishing is you're going to sand it up to about 1,000 grit, usually both dry and wet sanding, up to 2,000, 3,000, whatever you feel comfortable with. Once you have it sanded up to that level, you're going to need to apply some sort of finish to the board, either tung oil, linseed oil, whatever finish you want on the board before you start the polishing process, because the polish can stain the wood if it's not finished. So you want to protect the wood first. The video will start out with me having already applied that finish approximately 24 hours before. I had applied some finish to it. It was Howard's Butcher Block finish. That's what I had in the house. And I've let it sit for 24 hours, and we'll pick up the video from that point on. Again, if you want to look at how you sand your boards and go through that, I have other videos on that in the channel. Just look at several of my epoxy playlists. I'll list several of those playlists in the description of this video. Let's get started. So the first step in this process is to wipe down and buff the wood part and the epoxy. And then we will, once that's all buffed off, then we'll start applying the polish. I like to buff the boards using these white terry cloth towels. The way that you talk to me, the way that you and that should be enough protection for the wood so that when we polish this board, it doesn't stain the wood. Because what we're going to focus on polishing is actually the epoxy part. You make me feel right. Wanna look at you all night. Put you in that spot. This is what it looks like without any polish. I'm not sure how good the picture is showing. We're at the point where it's time to polish this board to make it so that this is a high gloss as you're looking through to these corks. Yesterday, placed some finish on there to allow the wood to soak it up and get protection. The finish I applied yesterday was this Howard's Butcher Block conditioner. Any finish would pretty much do that soaks into the wood that protects it. And I've used Odie's oil before. You can use Linseed oil you can use, tung oil, you can use a lot of different things. You just want to make sure that you give it enough time to soak in so that it protects the wood, because when we apply the polish that we're going to apply to this epoxy part, we don't want it staining the actual wood. I'm not sure how well this will show on the video, but this is what the board looks like now before polishing. And there was a little finish here, so it's a little clearer, but it's foggy, as you can see. And this is what the bottom side looks like. Now, the 3M Perfected system is a 3-step process that we're going to apply. You can get this, I'll put a link in my video description. So the first part you start out with is the rubbing compound, and that gives you your first set of scratches out. And each lid, you'll notice, has a color: white, black, and blue. And you buy the sponges according to the color as applicators. So this will go with the rubbing compound. Then the next step that you're going to put on is called Perfected Machine Polish, which is a little finer, and you use the black. And then the last step is called Ultra Fine Machine Polish, and that's the last one you use, and you'll use this blue buffer pad. So that's how we're going to apply it: white, black, and blue. You'll see that here in a minute. We're going to apply that with this Milwaukee cordless polisher. A real popular one is DeWalt. Any polisher will do. All you have to do is, it's got this Velcro pad here, and so these pads just stick right to it, and you just walk through the grits. So that's all there is to it, and that's what you're going to be watching. As discussed earlier, the first process is to use the white compound. So the hardest part is not letting this slide around. Like to shake it up. Just dab a couple drops on there, not a lot. And then I will kind of spread it around. You can feel the grit in the compound. And I haven't figured out how you don't splatter it most of the time. I turn it down to a lower speed, and then I kind of dab it at first, just to try to start on a slow, and then I turn up the speed. And I'm focused on the epoxy, although I will come over to the wood here a little bit. But my main focus is on the epoxy here. Then I'll get the side. Then I'll do it just one more time. Then once I do that, then I take a microfiber cloth, wipe it off. So that's what it looks like now. That's only the first buffing, and that's already pretty crystal clear. I'm going to do the back epoxy. Chamfer right there. Wait for the wind, wait for the night. I think it's looking pretty good. So this is how it looks after the initial polishing compound. on the back, on the front, and then the next step will be one more grit up. I think you can see how clear that looks already. So that's what it looks like after the first polish. Turn the back. The next step then is to go ahead and put on the machine polish. Don't get fooled, it's coming out in a blue color, but it's a black cap, so you use the black pad. You can actually feel your epoxy get warm as you're doing this. Okay, now turn it over.
Right till the end, we didn't know we lost. It's not easy living.
Okay, one more compound. So now we're going to put the blue compound on it. And the blue cap. So this is, again, why we put the finish on the wood first, is because you can't help but drift up onto the wood. So this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like without any polish. So that's what it looks like after you get done with all three. On the front, on the back, well, that's a wrap. That's how we go through the polishing process. In summary, let's talk about a couple key points. Number one is you sand your epoxy job up to whatever grit you feel comfortable with when you start to apply polishing. I at least go to 1500 or 2000 grit doing wet sanding. That's number one. Number two, you put a finish on the wood portion of that board. Now, when you're sanding up to 2000 grit, you'd only have to sand the epoxy part. If you can, you don't have to sand all of the wood. Sometimes if you sand it that high, it makes it hard to accept the finish. So it's your judgment on how high you sand the rest of the wood, but you're not going to avoid sanding some of the wood as you're sanding the epoxy up to 2000 grit or whatever you feel comfortable with. Different people will tell you different grits. You choose. I sanded this up to about 2000 grit with wet sandpaper, and then I moved on to my polishing system. So sand it up to whatever grit, apply a finish to the wood, let that soak in and settle, so that as you start to polish it and you get the polishing compound and then you're running the polisher on there, it doesn't end up staining the wood. Then the next step is to go through the polishing process, which I explained is 3 steps and color dependent. There are other polishing systems, Meguiar's Auto Polish, and I'm sure there's several others that I just haven't used, but this is the one I use, the Perfected system, and I will put a link to that through the Amazon link in the video description. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you think I deserve it, please give me a like. And if you want more information about CNC, laser, or epoxy work as I come out with videos, please subscribe and hit that bell and select that you want to be notified of all of them. With that, have a good day until we meet again in this medium. Wishing you the best.